Standard American Diet, or SAD as they call it, which is aptly acronymed. It's pretty much all brown. If you think about a plate, applesauce, chicken fingers and French fries, or white bread, some sort of lunch meat. Like, you need to be eating all the colors of the rainbow.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Healing Reset. Listen, guys, everyone's on a journey of preventing illness, trying to maintain this longevity that we've spoken about, or you might be battling illness. Wherever you're at on that journey, whatever bucket you fall in, this podcast applies to you. We want to show you that you are indeed designed to heal. Today, we have on Dr. Ange. She's a rock star naturopathic doctor. She talks a lot about gut health, and that's what this whole entire podcast is going to be about today. So listen up, share this episode for someone that you know who might have a need to understand their gut and how that's a direct line to health. Welcome to the show, Dr. Ange.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's just dive right in. Why are you so passionate about gut health? How did you find that actually leads to health?
I think that the gut health, I never really called it that to start with. I think it was more so realizing that the food I ate really mattered. And then a long time down the road, maybe in my late 20s, I'm going to say, I realized that the food that I ate, that I was able to absorb it and utilize it better, and that then maybe others around me, and not that comparison is always the best gauge for things, but I just realized that the foods I ate were fueling my body and I was doing well with them, and it was different for other people. So it sparked my interest as to why that was true. And it was really when I got into naturopathic medical school that I made a lot more connections from pathological standpoint as to why it matters and what the differences are.
One thing that sticks out is everyone has those people, and it might be you, someone listening, who's just sick a lot. They just kind of live in sickness. And this is never a judgment if this is you. But then you have some people who really do focus on ancestral eating, maybe nutrient dense foods, and they're not as sick a lot. And is that kind of the correlation you're drawing there of like, your body doesn't have to get out some of those toxins through sickness if it has the strong foundation of nutrients in your gut?
Yes, definitely. I've always tried to do my own hunting and get my own animals and eat vegetables. Never really got into soda, and also didn't really need antibiotics much throughout my life. And I find that those things all did correlate to just seem like I felt better more often, or I bounced back a lot quicker when I was sick than other people. And honestly, without those comparisons, I wouldn't have known that I was maybe more resilient than other people.
Yeah. So for our audience, if you do happen to be sick a lot, is this episode something that they can benefit from?
Yeah, definitely. For naturopathic medicine, our principle, our primary thing that we look at almost always is treat the gut first, because if you're not able to properly absorb and utilize the nutrients that you're eating, then it's not really benefiting you. So treating the gut first and making sure that your digestion is optimal is really important.
Well, let's start with your principles for good gut health. You kind of gave a little teaser right there. I look at a bell curve, and my husband will tell everyone I apply a bell curve to everything in life. I think it's just so relevant. And so you have like these super healthy people, and then we have some of us struggling with chronic illness, whatever that looks like. And you're saying from a naturopathic medicine standpoint that no matter where you're at on that bell curve, we're going to start treating with the gut.
Yes, almost everybody. I don't know of anybody that has just absolutely tip-top gut digestion health. Some people can be close, but the gut is always considered as one of the top items. And also my strategy, and I don't want to speak for other naturopathic doctors, but generally a good strategy is to start with your upper digestion first when treating the gut. Because
what's upper digestion?
Digestion starts in your mouth. So to think that digestion is just your stomach is, I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's really self-limiting. So you have to consider that your digestion starts in your mouth with your saliva, and when you first see or smell food, that's when your digestion starts. So, when you smell some food and you start to kind of salivate a little bit.
Guys, where's my audience that watches Frozen? Who has little kids listening that watches Frozen when they go, they breathe in and they go, ooh, chocolate. And the only reason I know that is because my 2-year-old says it every time, coinciding with the movie. But it's just, I've never thought about that. That's kind of, you smell something good. You smell your mom homemaking cookies. You smell someone that has a roast in the oven. And then your saliva glands are just like, hey, yo, they kick on.
Yeah.
Right. So you're right. It does start before food even enters our body.
Yeah. So there's amylase, which is an enzyme in our saliva, and that's our first step of digestion. And then, of course, the chewing, the mastication, it's called. So chewing your food, that's also one of the first steps of digestion. And then making sure that when it gets down to your stomach, that your stomach acid is good. And then throughout your intestines, your flora and the right acid base concentration. Digestion is very interesting, and there's so many parts to consider.
Yeah, we started with upper digestion, but then you talked about flora. What is gut flora? Is that the microbiome?
Yep, it is. So your gut flora is a balance or a whole makeup of different pathogens in your stomach. So we have pathogens on our skin for good flora. We have it, all over our body. Our mouth needs to have good flora. Our stomach needs to have good flora, even throughout our intestines. And different pathogens excrete different substances that help us to digest our food. And them helping aid in your digestion, it depends on your balance. So if you take a lot of antibiotics, it kind of kills everything off. And it seems like the bad guys, or what people call the bad guys, are a lot stronger. So they come back in higher numbers. And sometimes those can lead to an imbalance or an overgrowth of different ones that we don't need. So,
man, I hear stories on antibiotics, and we need antibiotics in this world. So this isn't antibiotics are the worst statement, but it can wreak havoc on someone's system. Correct?
yes. So I find a general rule of thumb with antibiotics is, seems like if you're taking them more than once every couple years, it's probably a bit too much. I know people that take them maybe once every 10 years or so. But if you're taking antibiotics for sure more than once in a year, that's going to be disrupting your gut flora, and it's going to be impacting your digestion and then your overall health.
I think it's something a lot of parents need to hear, myself included, because you have a sick kid who can't exactly tell you what's going on, ear infections or just an unknown infection. And it's like, oh, one round of antibiotics. Oh, we need a stronger round of antibiotics. And I hear this often, and it could be really taking a toll on that child's immune system.
Yeah, overall, it is very beneficial, as you've already pointed out. Antibiotics are necessary for us to do well and be healthy in certain circumstances, but it should be considered a lot further down the line. There's a lot of botanicals that can be utilized, a lot of preventative medicine that can be utilized from the good nutrition. And, speaking generally about naturopathic medicine, making sure that there's, kids are getting fresh air and exercise and hydration, a lot of good things that you can be doing ahead of time. But the kids that are on antibiotics frequently tend to have a lot more issues with general health. There's all kinds of things correlated to the conditions that kids get from the constant antibiotic use.
Yeah. Again, we're getting off a little bit on the antibiotic trail. So to bring it back, we talk about microbiome diversity, which means good guys and bad guys, right? We want diversity of these bugs. What do you call them? Bacterium?
Yeah, there's bacterium, or pathogens or flora. You can call them a lot of different things, I guess.
So it's not about having all good, no bad. It's about having this healthy gut diversity. How do you, and back to your principles, how do you start making that flourish to bring us back into balance, which brings us into better health?
Eating foods that are rich in pre and probiotics are really good, especially fermented veggies, lacto-fermented veggies. It's vegetables that you ferment with just salt and water. And that is a live, active culture. And what's different about eating a lacto fermented veggie versus with its pre and probiotics in it versus taking a prebiotic or probiotic is that it's a live pre and probiotic. And you also, even in a pre and probiotic, when it names out maybe 5 or 10 or 18 strains, and you're like, wow, that sounds like so many. If you do a vegetable, though, that's lacto fermented, you don't even know how many are in there because there's so many. So the diversity in eating the real foods is really important for good gut health. So pre and probiotic foods is one of my biggest ones for good gut health. And then also eating the rainbow. So that means not a pack of Skittles, but instead, when you're eating your food, you want your plate to be all different colors. So the standard American diet, or SAD as they call it, which is aptly acronymed, it's pretty much all brown. If you think about a plate, it's applesauce, chicken fingers, and French fries, or white bread, some sort of lunch meat. Like, you need to be eating all the colors of the rainbow. Dr. Deanna Minich does, I've seen her speak a few times, and she does a great job with research on how important it is to eat all different color foods and the impact it has with the different phytonutrients for all of our different systems.
What I hear you say is the food pyramid that I learned in 7th grade has died because there was a lot of brown on that guy.
Yes, that food pyramid, I would say, was probably sponsored by the highest profitability items that they could come up with or something. I'm not sure. But to really sustain good health, it almost needs to be flipped upside down. But with the exception of definitely avoiding seed oils, there's been a lot of recent correlations that have been made to ill health based on consuming seed oils. That includes like sunflower seed oil, canola oil, good fats to eat for those listening and wondering.
Okay, stop. We're talking about microbiome diversity, and how we get there is through what we put in our mouths, where it starts upper digestion to our stomach. And you're talking about fat. And I know someone out there is going to be like, no, that's not what I want. I don't want fat. So what do you mean by good fats?
So good fats, a lot of times, first one people think about is like avocados, but there's also nuts and seeds, even chia seeds, flax seeds, walnuts, definitely. Almonds,
what about butter?
cashews. Butter is the best. I was working my way from least favorite to most favorite. So butter contains a lot of really good stuff that actually helps our gut heal as well. So butter is amazing.
Guys, the real stuff though, the real butter. And this was a shift in my life. I give my kids a lot of butter, and that's something that my 20-year-old self would have judged my 30-year-old self doing. It would be like, why are you putting so much butter, right? That's fat. But that doesn't equate to fat. Your body needs these good fats to sustain and to be healthy and to feed that gut microbiome. So I know butter sometimes is one of those people are afraid of it. They think it's going to equal fat.
Mm-hmm. We need good fats to create our hormones. That's why when somebody has really, really low body fat, and thinking specifically of females, maybe an eating disorder or doing a lot of exercise, if they aren't consuming enough fats or if they have too low of a BMI, they end up not being able to have a menstrual cycle. And that can lead to issues down the road as well. So fat is good. Fat keeps us feeling satiated, gives us really good energy. The kilocalories of energy for fat are higher than proteins or carbohydrates. So you're getting really good energy with good fats. Tallow is another good option, just to toss out another couple. And then we already said butter, and kind of drawing a blank on the rest of them.
Lard?
But lard is good. Yep.
Side note, I rendered lard for the first time in my life last year. My sister is a very motivating human. She raised pigs. We have half of that pig sitting in our freezer, and I rendered the lard. It's not an easy task, you guys, but never would I have foresaw myself eating lard. But I just want to give a strong but, because people are going to be like, oh, heart disease, blah, 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 blah. If you really do the research and eat this balanced, ancestral, nutrient-dense diet, you'll find that there's a lot of good benefits from these butters, these lards, tallow. So don't knock it until you try it, or don't knock it until you at least do a loose search to validate what we're saying.
Yeah, definitely. I just this year started. I usually would cook my duck with the fat on. I pluck and then cook them that way. But this year I did the breasts separate and then I rendered down the duck fat off of the breasts, and that is life altering. That is the most delicious thing. And it does take time, but it really is pretty easy as far as I just put mine in the slow cooker and let it go for, it was probably about 16 to 18 hours, I would say. And then filtered it out through some cheesecloth. I don't know how people normally do it. It was a DIY job, but
Similar. Mm-hmm.
worked well. Yeah.
So we're starting out by saying digestion begins when you smell something. We're fooled a lot because I smell sugar and my body is like, yeah, that's where we're going to go. But the more I find I start eating true to how my body should grow, the less I crave some of those more toxic foods or foods that have been processed, I should say. Next, we're talking about eating a colorful variation, making sure that you have good colors on your plate. Then good fats, bringing in good fats, understanding what a seed oil is. Look at the back of your labels, you guys. Seed oils are everywhere. They're everywhere. They're fillers. So understanding seed oils versus what a good fat to serve your body well is. What is another principle to healthy eating to feed our guts well?
When you were just saying about the seed oils and how it's fillers, it reminded me of the amount of time that one needs to dedicate to just cooking their own food in their kitchen. I think just calculating about an hour a day total, and you can really get quite far with that. If you're going to do like a meal prep on Sundays and maybe Wednesdays or something, allowing a few hours those days and then having things ready to go. But cooking at home is instrumental to good health. It gets you involved in the process. You know what's actually going in your food. It really is not expensive if you source things like, you get an eighth or a quarter of a cow or a pig or something like that, or like a big bag of carrots and then a big thing of celery. That stuff can go very far. And cooking at home, though, is one of the things that I know has attributed to my success for being healthier and having better gut health overall.
What about meat? Can you dive into the difference of conventionally raised meats compared to a grass-fed, grass-finished meat?
Yeah, definitely. So whenever you're consuming meat, if that animal is inflamed, then you're going to eat the meat, butter, milk, whatever it is from that animal. You're going to get inflamed from that animal being inflamed. So animals get inflamed from eating different grains, soy and corn primarily. If a cow or pig or even chicken or any of that is raised primarily on a corn and soy diet, they do that because they can fatten them up faster. And also, oftentimes, those animals are also more stressed out because they're in a tight barn. So, a quick thing I want to point out is that when you're purchasing meats, if they say cage free for a chicken, that just means it's often just stuffed into a barn, but not in an individual cage. And for cows as well, grass fed and grass finished is important so that they aren't trying to fatten it up right before it goes to market with the grains and the corn and the soy.
Now, one thing from, I think it was maybe the first episode on this podcast, we talked about corn and wheat being Roundup ready. So these are already something that's assaulted with a spray. And then we're finishing the cows off on not just untreated grass, not right, which holds those vitamins and a lot of amazing nutrients. Instead, we're finishing them with these grains that are already Roundup ready. So they've already been treated with pesticides. And then you talk about the stress that goes into that whole process. So when you guys are at the market, you do want to make sure it says grass finished. Some people think that's a newer thing. It's not. It's just a way to kind of, if you don't have the grass finished, it's grass finished. It's a way to really trick us into thinking we're consuming meat that's going to serve our body the best. It's like a tiered thing, right? You have conventional raised, then you have grass raised, and then you have grass fed, grass finished.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with you.
The accessibility of getting a quarter cow, getting a half cow, of finding a pig is there for the audience out there. You can know a farmer, you can know somebody who's actually going to be able to provide you a chance to even come out to the farm and see how they do things ethically and then source your own animal. It's a lot upfront. So you might pay a chunk of money upfront, but then that can last in your freezer for a solid amount of time to serve your family. I know it's been a game changer in our world. Dr. Ange and I have talked about this off air on how I know for me, I can sit down and when I'm eating a steak that comes from the cow or pork that comes from the pig, I can sit and pray. And that's how I would practice the spiritual component in my life. Just pray thanks for how that animal has blessed my family. And that's when I think of digestion starting different, right? I start giving thanks for this pig who sacrificed its life to serve my body. And it's shifted how I look at cooking in the kitchen and how I give thanks for my food.
Yeah, a good way to honor and appreciate that animal as well is to eat as much of it as you can. So making broth out of the bones, which is a huge gut healer that we haven't touched on yet, but we'll jump back to in a second. But making sure that you're eating the kidneys, you're eating the liver, you're eating the heart, you're eating the tongue, you're eating all these parts that the more parts of the animal you eat, called nose to tail nutrition, the more nutrients you're going to get, because having a lean cut of, a filet mignon is not going to give you the nutrients at all that eating some heart or some liver or something would do. So this last weekend, I made a stir fry and I put miscellaneous veggies in there and I did some ground venison. And then I had a heart and a deer heart as well. And so I just diced it up and I added it into the stir fry. And it's like, I can't taste anything different. It truly does not taste any different. I'm not trying to fake anybody out. And I have a whole bunch of extra nutrients based on kind of sliding it in there. One thing I tell my patients a lot is if they don't really like liver or the taste of it, or also it could work for heart or any of the other extras that I recommend to put in there, you can ask your butcher, or you yourself, if you have a meat grinder, can just grind it in with your meat. And then, especially if you're doing like a spaghetti or a lasagna or a chili or something like that, it seems like those tomato based sauces can kind of even out the flavor if there might be a slight flavor. And so you can add in those extra nutrient dense organs and really up the ante on your dishes.
People are going to say Dr. Ange liver, not going to do it. That's where I draw the line. But I think back to my grandpa, he consumed liver. My mom did as a kid. It slowly kind of phased out this intuitive way of eating. Now, what about capsules? And I'm not just asking for a friend, I'm asking for myself because I take liver capsules to try to get this nutrition. And I'm sure, again, it's that tier, right? Getting it from the source is probably the best. But if someone's like, I'm just not there yet, what's your opinion on taking liver as a supplement?
I do want to say really quick, I do have one naturopathic colleague and he eats raw liver, which, so as far as the tiers go, I am not there yet. I feed raw liver to my dogs, but for mine, I cook it. So its first step would be raw liver. Second would be cooked liver. Next would be grinding it in with your meat. I feel like it's still a cooked liver, but you can do encapsulations. And I've come across some really good companies that have done a really nice job. I don't have any specific recommendations for now. I do those in appointments, I guess. So I try not to make specific supplement recommendations as a random blanket statement. But yeah, encapsulations can be good. I actually did that. I don't like particularly the taste of deer liver as much. And so I actually did dehydrate last year my deer liver and encapsulated it myself. And it worked out really well.
We'll circle us around quickly to broth, which makes me think of it's winter in Michigan. These warming foods are what I want to consume when it's 2 degrees outside. But broth is one that I've learned how to make very simple, very, very simple with the bones of our cow. So that's something that I like to do in the winter and to just sip on like a coffee. I know that sounds really weird, but I believe my body is super happy after it.
Yeah, there's been research that people, if they consume it before bed, they actually can sleep a lot better at night because it is such a nourishing and kind of calming beverage to have. So, bone broth, excellent for helping heal the gut. It has a lot of L-glutamine. It's got a lot of collagen in it. If you put something like chicken feet or like the knuckles of the joints of the cow bones, anything that's got like some tendons or whatever on there, you can get really good collagen out of it. An important component to making bone broth is always making sure you get a tablespoon or two of apple cider vinegar in there, helps extract the nutrients out of the bone.
Ooh, that's a good tip.
And then low and slow on that. Some people do it stovetop. I end up usually doing slow cooker just because I can't keep an eye on my gas stove for that many hours. I have done it as well in my like quick cooker, pressure cooker unit, and that works really well too. But cooking it for in the pressure cooker, it was about 3-4 hours. On the stove, I would say about 8 to 10 hours. In the slow cooker, I usually let it go for about 24 hours. So cooking it down and then filtering it out, and the benefits are quite numerous, and you're using even more of the animal, which is even better too.
Hey, and feel free to fail doing these things. The first time I did it stovetop. I didn't put a top on it. And my mom's like, you're losing all the moisture. Oh, it's fine, mom. No, I lost all the moisture. It just went poof into the air. So there was my broth. It was just a bunch of bones left over. So just experiment and have grace with yourself as you move forward into trying to learn how to eat for your body. And I guess the one thing I wanted to ask you was, what should we avoid? I threw out sugar there. I think everything in moderation probably isn't the worst. We live in the sad diet world. But what are the things where you're just like, hey, I see you eyeing that rainbow of Skittles. Don't do it.
I would say sugar would be really, really high on the list as far as like a processed sugar. If it's a sugar that's naturally occurring in an actual piece of fruit, I think that's fine, depending on people's individuality. So anything I say, it could be applicable to you, but I would definitely recommend to get fully evaluated by a healthcare practitioner, a naturopathic doctor, if you could, to see how it would benefit you best, or if there would be a better recommendation. Because sugar wise, like example, berries have a lot lower glycemic index. So if somebody's like pre-diabetic or diabetic, then berries would be a lot better option for them than a bunch of bananas or something, because bananas have a very high glycemic index as far as fruits go. So sugar is a definite avoid.
Caffeine?
Caffeine depends on how the person reacts to it, but if you're going to be consuming coffee, you should always do it with food, and you should do it at least an hour after you wake up in the morning. So if your body isn't naturally producing its own cortisol, it's a detriment to your hormones overall if you start each day just fasting with a cup of coffee. And I know that's a very trendy thing to do.
Yeah, add some butter, add some fat to it. I do have to say, feel how your body reacts to coffee. If you're listening to this, we talk a lot about intuition. I'm drinking coffee right now. I have a newborn. She slept very little last night, but coffee makes me wired, and it makes my body feel almost a little anxious. And I don't have an anxious bone in my body as a human normally, within reason, guys. But I know it probably isn't the best for me. Sometimes I just go for it, right? Because man, we're all just trying to do the best we can in any given minute. And sometimes you make some poor choices. Coffee might be an individual poor choice for me and how I actually process it, but it might not be for someone else. So I was curious your opinions on caffeine.
As you said, see how you feel with it. And some people do okay with it. And a lot of people are depending on it to get their day going. And there's a good chance they're dehydrated, or you need to work on better sleep. And to work on better sleep, there's a lot of options for that. Some people circumstantial, like you with a newborn, have a special circumstance for that, but there's still ways to work on getting ideal sleep, because you, as one of my professors would say, nature bats last. You cannot outdo the principles that you need to follow as far as hydration, movement, sleeping, good nutrition. And yeah, you just can't. outsmart that.
Guys, sleep. Try to get your sleep locked up. Get this nutrition, this whole conversation. Have this be a starting place. Put broth in your diet today. Put a liver capsule in your diet today, multiple liver capsules. We can't outsmart nature, and our body is a whole system. And so we're just really trying to motivate our listenership to change some of these habits. Maybe avoid fast food lines. If that's your thing, driving past it, you see it, you smell it, it starts that digestion. Keep driving. Just keep driving. But you had mentioned to see a naturopathic doctor, and I just wanted to call out, email us at info@healingreset at thehealingreset.com. We have a list of people who are going to say, hey, let's draw some labs. Let's look at your nutrition, because a lot of it starts right here. A lot of it starts with what you put in your mouth. Dr. Ange, end this podcast by telling listeners 3 things that they can do today for better health.
Let's see. So I would say, from what we've talked about today, for in the direction of overall health, but gut health, would be meet your local farmers. Your local farmers are who are going to be able to provide you with the best quality meats, eggs, dairy products, vegetables, everything that you could need, fresher, more nutrient dense. So meet your local farmers would be a primary one. You might need to wait until springtime when the farmers markets come around, if that's what works for you. Second would be to be consistent with any change that you make. So small changes over a great amount of time, but with consistency is where you're going to really see results. So of the tons of things that we mentioned today, if you could just try to do one thing for the next week that's new or different, and carry that on to the next few weeks and see how you feel different. So yeah, just one small thing, whatever it is that you choose. Maybe adding butter to your diet would be a good one.
Lots of butter, grass-fed, grass-finished butter. It's not cheap. FYI, at the store, it's not always cheap, but add it. See how you feel.
Yeah. And then the last one, which could be a consistent change you could make, and the easiest or cheapest one, I think, is to stay hydrated. So dehydration leads to fatigue, it leads to digestive issues, it leads to muscle issues. Your whole body depends on you being hydrated. So I would say staying hydrated, whatever that looks like to you. The 2 general rules of thumb: either half your body weight in ounces, or until your urine is a light yellow color. So whatever works for you. And it needs to be water, not vitamin water, not some sort of a sports drink or whatever. You need to be drinking just plain water.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Statements and views expressed in this podcast are not medical advice and have not been evaluated by the FDA. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse nor accept responsibility for statements made by guests.